My throat is a little bit sore. I'm sorry if I sound weird or different in this video. Hopefully it's not too grating. Somebody on my Discord mentioned that when playing Dark Souls 3, by the time they reach the Farron Keep, they'll have a plus 10 weapon. I didn't think that was even possible for a moment, then I realized that it only meant killing the dancer with a plus 4, which really isn't that difficult, all things considered. I didn't really think of the logistics behind it beyond that and went on with my life, blissfully unaware of how truly easy Dark Souls 3 really is. Eventually, I ended up seeing a forum post while looking something else up about a YouTube video showing off how to get a plus 10 weapon before the Abyss Watchers by Neptunus Sequester, and decided to watch it. They mentioned that it's totally possible to get a plus 10 before even fighting Vort, which I thought would be a great idea to go ahead and try. Also, the entire reason I wanted to do this video is because of the thumbnail. I know this isn't a particularly powerful or interesting build or anything, I genuinely just thought it was funny. To start off, and to keep the theme, I'm taking my pants off, but I have a much better idea for an outfit later on. For now though, we have a few things to take care of before the run really takes off. Eodex Gundyr is extremely easy once you learn how Dark Souls 3 parries work. It's honestly kinda funny, so I'm just gonna let this fight play out a bit. Not as many of the attacks can be parried in Phase 2, but it still goes by very quickly with how big the damage opportunities are. The infamous tree jump, which I succeeded first try, lets us gather some useful gear, namely an Estus shard, a chunk with the black fire bombs I started with, and the silver serpent ring, which I wore for the entire rest of the run. All we need for the sword is a measly 10 strength and dex and 12 faith, which I get immediately before leveling up vigor a bit. The health bar is going to be a bit monstrous pretty soon, but I feel like that's just kind of how Dark Souls 3 is. The high wall houses quite a few things we'll need to gather, first and foremost the Astora straight sword itself. On the way, I actually got the symbol of avarice out of the very first mimic, and it genuinely just didn't occur to me to use it while I was grinding for materials later. Anyway, the weapon is pretty infamously bad in Dark Souls 1, at least within the circle I'm in. There do seem to be people who glaze it a bit, but I will truly never understand why. It's genuinely one of the worst weapons in Dark Souls 1. Here, though, is a different story. It actually has decent base damage and decent scaling, as well as being able to infuse it, hence the raw part of the title. After the second bonfire, we can reach the sword pretty quickly by just running inside, dropping down a level, taking out the pus of man with some fire bombs for a titanite shard, killing the crystal lizard for a raw gem, dropping down, entering the building, going in the first door on the left for a titanite shard, then dropping off the platform with the green blossom in the next room. The sword is in a chest right there. The sword is plenty powerful to trivialize this room, which is good since it has a titanite shard and an Estus shard, both of which are very useful. Now that we have our weapon, we can drop down, backstab the winged knight a couple times, and get the shortcut back up to the first bonfire. There's one more titanite shard to gather to the left from the other pus of man opposite the bonfire, and I can use the spoils to convince Andre to make my ass raw. It takes quite a bit of farming to finally get enough titanite shards to get to plus 3, since it takes an entire 12 in this game, but it does give me plenty of souls to pour into vigor to make the couple upcoming fights much easier, and we can go fight one of the best bosses in the series, the Dancer of the Boreal Valley. The damage is shockingly good, 84 a hit, meaning this fight really isn't that difficult, especially with how much I've fought the Dancer. The hits come out very fast too, given that I'm one-handing a stray sword, so I'm able to take out the Dancer fairly quickly. Unfortunately, I didn't beat her first try. I was a bit short on health and got greedy in the second phase, then did the same thing on my second try, but third time's the charm. The souls get me to a cool 26 vigor and 20 endurance, and we can start grinding out large titanite shards. Selling all my armor and souls also lets me get just enough to buy the first two, and arguably most important pieces, of the main armor set I'll be using for the rest of the game. The Dancer set is a bit expensive, but very worth it. She is known for her appearance in the thumbnail after all. Now we need to grind out large titanite shards in chunks, which is incredibly fun, much more so than running through the high wall a few times for some shards. Instead, I get a rest at a bonfire, kill one knight, rest, kill, rest. It takes a bit, but eventually the materials are gathered. It's honestly not that bad, but killing one enemy over and over can be a bit grating. It still only took about 20 minutes though. The souls let me buy the rest of the armor and level up to 28 vigor. It's also not necessary to get all 12 chunks, since several can be found around the consumed King's Garden and in the castle itself. Osiris is our next late game boss that we're fighting super early, but he's honestly not that bad. You can generally be super aggressive because of how long most of his windups are, as long as you're being careful of the staff slams. The second phase is mostly similar, but caution is much more important because of the weird instant charge attack. I highly recommend using a good shield for some added security when you're not actively wailing on him. I would argue it's harder than the Dancer fight, if only for the jank, but I was able to take him out on my second try. The souls mean more health, level 38 to be exact, which should be more than enough to make Champion Gundyr pretty similar to a casual fight. He's made even easier if you learn to parry. The timing is pretty similar to 8x Gundyr, with the main differences being certain attacks you can't parry. Generally, you're just going to want to be a bit more careful, erring on the side of caution and not getting greedy. Watch out for quick punches and kicks, and especially the shoulder check that carries him way farther than it should. It took me a few tries, mostly because I'm bad at parrying, but certainly not a fight I'd say was particularly difficult, and at least the champ is one of my favorite bosses in the game. With the hardest part of the run by far down, we can run into the Flameless Shrine, grab the Coiled Sword Fragment, among whatever other stuff you might want here, like the Eyes of a Firekeeper for the good ending, and do the tree jump one more time to trade the fragment for a Titanite Slab. That's an easy, raw Astora straight sword plus 10 before even fighting Vort. That's not the end of this video though, I want to see how well this weapon holds up for the rest of the run. I was almost able to take Vort out before the phase transition, but I wanted to take a funny screenshot where I was at low health with no Estus and said that was a close one, but accidentally died doing that. Anyway, I beat Vort in less than 30 seconds on my next try. I spent a lot of time here killing the first few enemies of the settlement because I'm trying to figure out how the Estus drop system works for a video I'm working on, so ignore my soul count. I ran through the settlement, which, believe it or not, was not a challenge at all. Normally the Crystal Sage gives me a bit of trouble just because of how much damage the second phase does for literally no reason. Half my health in a single attack at levels I should be nowhere near at this point in the game. Luckily, I'm at levels I should be nowhere near at this point in the game and take it out first try. I hope it makes sense that I'm skipping past most of what I'm actually doing. Nothing right now poses literally any threat at all. Look at how quickly this normally somewhat challenging NPC goes down. Yeah, I think skipping past stuff like this makes sense. Not much to say about it regardless. The dog just appearing above my head will never not be funny though. The deacons are very much not a threat. All the deacon mobs can be taken out with 2 hits, and the head deacon goes down so quickly that the mobs don't even have a chance to use force and push me away. Definitely the easiest deacon fight I've ever had. A dagger makes the swamp much less annoying, letting you quickly get past the giant Gru near the 3rd flame. Even then though, it's super easy to kill with this much damage. The rest is just a straight sprint though, so once again, not really anything engaging to go over. The Abyss Watchers are the hardest boss post plus 10 so far, but that's not really saying much. I took out the main boss's health bar so quickly in fact that all 3 Watchers got up faster than I've ever seen it happen before or since. Luckily, the other 2 fought each other and I was able to shred the boss no problem. Second phase was much the same too, with the main Watcher going down extremely quickly, especially since it staggers so easily, even with the random hyper armor. The skeleton balls in the catacombs are technically a threat, but they're easy to avoid, and all the enemies are barely worth considering beyond potentially staggering you and making the run take a second longer. I'm not sure how much damage really matters for Wolnir, but as long as you break the single bracelet first, the pair on the other side are very easy to hit. The single one is on the arm that he pulls his sword out with, which makes the arm move much more. Irithyll and the Demon Ruins are kind of a special case. This is actually the character I used for my videos about those areas. Yeah, this video has been in the works for a very long time, only because I was worried I would struggle to make it interesting after getting out of the castle, and honestly, I hope I've been succeeding. I'm not going to go into detail here, you can go watch those videos, but they did genuinely change my perspective on this game quite a bit, and especially my entire full game playthrough with the same mentality really made me like this game far more. Anyway, the old Demon King is kind of funny with this amount of damage. Well, I was gonna say you can't get greedy, but it really doesn't matter with this much health and damage. I still suck at fighting the Pontiff, but, well, I mean, it's this build. I talk about the fight much more in that video, and you can go watch that one if you're curious. I'm allowed to self-promote, it's my own video. The clone almost goes down before it can attack even once though, which means the damage is pretty crazy. Anor Londo, despite the lore implications, is pretty insignificant, much shorter than the version in the first game and much easier to sprint through. The only small issue is the deacons on the stairs, and you'd still have to run at them like this in a casual playthrough, so that doesn't really count. I don't do all too much damage to Aldrich, the game has nearly caught up to me having a plus 10, and I also kinda suck at the Aldrich fight, but it's an easy boss regardless, and I'm able to take it out first try despite not playing this game for months between this and fighting the Pontiff. I did almost completely forget about Yorm, but I'm also not killing him without the Storm Ruler. Something breaking wind? I don't know, there's a joke here, I don't want to find it. Anyway, the castle is definitely where the game expects you to have as much damage as I have, if not more. The enemies leading up to the Dragon Slayer armor are easy to run past, but the boss itself is also really easy. I never realized how many iframes this game actually gives you, but it's definitely a lot, and it makes this fight kind of a joke. Another extremely easy first try, with shockingly good damage too. Keeping up the aggression with the speed of the straight sword also definitely feels pretty good. The Grand Archives is also pretty easy to run through, even with the Crystal Sage being annoying. The worst part is the Thrall with the Flamberge, since it delays its attacks for so long, especially when it's inside the Sage before it's disappeared, and I literally just can't see it because of how long the death animation is. The Princes are one of my favorite bosses in the entire series, and as such, I fought them quite a bit and have gotten pretty decent, even despite my sloppy playing in this run. The Straight Sword with 40 endurance really lets you just wail on enemies a lot. I love the flow of this fight. Dodge, hit, dodge, hit, stagger, hit, hit, hit. It's one of the things that Dark Souls 3 gets made fun of most for, which is entirely fair and does get pretty stale in a lot of instances. Osiris comes to mind, but somehow the Princes nail the flow perfectly. In stark contrast to the Twin Princes, the last few bosses are some of my least favorite in the trilogy. Well, that's unfair to the Wyvern. It's just a sprint through a few enemies, it's fine. The Archdragon Peak is probably the worst level in this entire game, and it's really not that bad to sprint through, and that theme is carried perfectly by the Wyvern fight. Nameless King, however, is genuinely one of my least favorites. I know this is a very unpopular opinion. Nameless is largely loved by the community, but I've never really understood why. It's the Princes, but with King of the Storm first and a weird flow. King of the Storm is fine, if annoying, because of the camera, but it does give you a free riposte, and it feels more like a spectacle than an actual fight, which makes it even worse that you need to do the phase again every time you fail, but whatever, it's like a minute long. Nameless, on the other hand, is awful. He's far more aggressive than the Princes, who I think are the perfect flow for this game, and constantly attacks. This is mostly fine, since most attacks do let you get in a hit or two after the combo is over, especially while the next attack is winding up. The problem comes in when he's constantly jumping away to dive back into you, or jumping away only to lore walk back. If none of his attacks carried him away, or the attacks that did had a longer windup, I think I'd like this boss a lot more. But instead, he can just suddenly be in the air, and it kinda sucks. I don't think this boss is bad. F it, I'm pulling out my last joke for the video. Andre, make my ass heavy. Anyway, all that's left is the Soul of Cinder, who I don't particularly like nor dislike. Some of his movesets are fun, the Greatsword moveset is good, the Katana one is fine, the Sorcerer one sucks, and the Thrusting Sword one sucks. The Soul Spray, or whatever it's called, combined with the Homing Soul Mask at his effect are so annoying. The spin on the Thrusting Sword is genuinely one of the worst moves in the game, and being spammed with thrusts is never fun. Nor is being spammed with Wrath of the Gods. The Gwyn phase is vastly easier than Dark Souls 1 Gwyn without parrying though, and I always skip talking too much about Gwyn in these videos, so I think it makes sense to carry on with the tradition even though it's a completely different game. Just don't get caught in the Manus combo and you should be fine. I was able to take him out first try even if it was a little bit close. So like I said, this video has been in the work for like 3 months just because I didn't really know how to write it. Hopefully it ended up being funny and not too uncomfortable. I was also going to do the DLC, but then I remembered that I don't like the Dark Souls 3 DLC. And I just didn't think that would be super interesting, even with infusing this with heavy. Like, the whole thing is making the base game super easy, right? I thought that's what was interesting and unique about this run. Anyway, thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I love you all. And we have a lot of members, 37 to be exact, because a lot got gifted in my last couple of streams. Thank you once again. I think it was only Krista and Trev. If I'm missing anyone, I'm very sorry for missing anyone who gifted. But thank you, Andy, Frippy, Luddy. I'm so sorry if I mispronounce anything. Nedjao Benabena, Spape, Pengine Z, Cassie Gretsch, Nihilistic Pangolin, Hillary H, Lucas Arcoverde, Howling Nocturne, Magnetar Technologies and Fleetworks, Harrison Briggs, Barnabas P, Trev the Dev, Edvin, Maple Pancakes, Christian Dunbar, Holly Warlock, Lilith, Lam Estusel, Raccoona, I Like Goats, Deuterium Oxide, Zekrom, Robin Torsten Grabsky, Ratini, LA Is My Home, When's July, Nick Sensei, Krista, White Flame, Portwine, Tartaruga Lagasta, V, Amarok, and Ryan Rickard. Thank you all for supporting the channel. I don't know how to end this.